This is going to be going over the best heroes and artifacts to put on your Covenant wishlist. Really, really OP just for getting new characters or artifacts, or just copies of characters and artifacts, because you have you daily summons, you get a bunch of summons from events like Epic Dash, or Chronicle bookmarks, that sort of thing. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So first, some ground rules. Of course, we want to skip the free units. They're all listed down here. And then, also, in general, I think characters kind of just work with one copy, except for Vildred, who really wants SSS, or the Speed Imprint. So try to get new characters before anything else. The wishlist also has a thing where the second a character's banner ends, they will be available. So somebody like Ludwig, even though he's not available right now, the second his banner ends, he's available. You're going to want to prioritize newer units over older ones because you can get older ones from selectors, especially if you're playing during an event. Right now, you'll be able to get so many characters from selectors that your wishlist is going to look kind of weird, but I'm going to just pretend we're not getting a billion selectors, and you can figure that out yourself, who you want to selector and who you want to wishlist. You can put 7 characters on your wishlist at once, so you'll have a pretty wide range of units that you have to pick anyways. At the very top, to get one copy ASAP, these are just 4 units, I think, are really, really strong, and if you're not getting them one way or another, whether it's selectors or the packs that you can buy at the very start of the game for new players, you're going to want to have them on your wish list and try to get them as fast as possible. Estelle is just an insane knight because she gives so much damage reduction while also being a really strong soul generator and a pretty strong bruiser. She kind of just does a lot of things at once and is insanely hard to deal with. Really, really strong for turn 2 right now. And she's like, because you can also just use her as a bruiser with like damage, with team damage mitigation and stuff like Guild War and Arena. She's just a really good all-around unit to have, I think, for all PvP. So definitely try to get her ASAP, especially given that she's a new character. You want to put her on your wish list as soon as possible so you can try and get her, because she won't be available in selectors. And then Fene, standard, PvE, insane DPS. She's just healing for the team, she does damage, she's just good to have for PvE, there's not too much to really say about it. She can be used in every expedition except for Earth. Use her in Constellation as well, and then when the Advents come around, she'll be used in the Fire and Ice ones. A lot of places, runs through Abyss, and so on. Setsuka still really, really strong and annoying to deal with in all PvP, really. She got a pretty big buff for Arena and Guild War with the release of certain heroes. There's a lot more evasion heroes these days. She benefits a lot from them dodging things. They benefit from her passive, giving everybody 30 evasion. So you're going to want to pick her up even if you don't play much RTA these days, I think. And then if you do play RTA, she's still really strong there just as a light pick. People are pretty much forced to account for her and play around her. And especially right now with artifact selectors available, you'll be able to pick up her artifact for free. You're probably getting both Fene and Setsuka from selectors, but... And then Rowana, she has some use in PvP, mainly just, I think, in Arena and Guild War for the most part. Sometimes you fight into teams that have a lot of units that proc her S2, and she can be useful there. For PvE, she's really, really nice for the Trials Constellations against Aquinas. She's pretty much mandatory for that. And I think just given how strong and stable her S2 has been, she's just always been a good unit ever since her release. You definitely want a copy of her. We have the Vildred tier. This is just keep him on until you get him SSS, even as a newer player. Because remember, like I mentioned, you have 7 slots. I think it's fine to just dedicate a slot to Vildred and just try and rack up imprints while you're at it. So let's take a look at the PvP higher prio tier. We have Oddbade Ludwig, who is really, really nice. He does so much damage. It's kind of hard to deal with him with how fast he pushes up to take his turn. His S3 has really strong debuffs too, block and silence. Really annoying to deal with. You can try and Bellion into him to cut some of his souls, but Dawn giving him 100% extra soul gain lets him gain souls through Bellion. And then even in Arena and Guild War, I think there's some offense comps you can use with him, because he just does so much AoE damage. He's pretty good. You're going to want to pick him up, especially given that he's a new character. Like I said, like he's gonna be available soon. I am actually personally stalling my free Cov summons until his artifact hits the banner, but you'll be able to pick him up soon if you didn't roll him from his banner directly. And then we have Saria. Saria, she's an extra turn follow-up DPS pretty much, but everybody, or all new players get Renock for free. A lot of people will have RNL. You can RNL Saria, you can Renock Saria. She gives everybody invincibility. Does a big AoE. She has, you can give her otherworldly machinery to let her ignore damage share too into scales comps. So just really nice cleave DPS for Arena. And then you have Tactical Arthur Kali. Pretty much a free speed imprint if you get her, because you can imprint her with her 4-star form. So 12 speed imprint, just like Vildred. And she's really good with single target DPS. So something like Renock, she works pretty well with. I think you definitely want a copy of her. She's a pretty strong debuffer and, you know, like cleave speed imprint. Ivana, nice to have, given that, you know, people might pick Shepherd of the Dark Diane sometimes, and she also can have some use into some Lady of the Scales teams. She just counters, like, her immortality counter still works out to be pretty solid, so definitely worth. She's one of those units you just want to have a copy of, I think, so you can deal with those things whenever you want. Then we have Elvira. She shuts off Fighting Spirit. She's a bit hard to use in isolation, but I think given the consideration that Scales is one of the best ML5s right now, and Elvira Scales has insane synergy in Guild War and Arena, because you can just slam Elvira in the front line with Scales. Giving her the extra immortality buff guarantees that she gets her immortal off. So it's 4 turns of immortal. You can run her base speed. Your team pretty much becomes unkillable. Even on quick battle, you'll be able to run through a lot of teams. And if you're not quick battling, by the time her immortality runs out, you'll have 20 souls. You can soul burn extra turn S3 again, making it 7 straight turns of, or 7 straight Elvira turns of being unkillable, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, insane synergy there. I think if you don't have Scales or have no plans of acquiring Scales, she does fall off quite a bit, maybe like down here somewhere. But given how strong Scales is, I think she's really, really good. And new players have their newbie Mystic summons, so you can pick up Scales relatively easily. And then we have Yoha. Yoha with her damage reflect is really, really nice. You can use her in RTA sometimes, you can use her in Guild War. Killing off things like Freerin. Perfumer Biblis isn't on, you know, like banner right now, of course, and she is limited, but she has pretty strong synergy with her there, especially in Guild War. And then her S3 nuke does a ton of damage. I think she's one of the better knights that we have for RGBs. Then we have lower Prio PvP. I think these are units that you just won't really use that frequently in PvP. Like, they're either like counter picks that you won't get to use super often, or just stuff that you just won't use in favor of better units. Something like Elena, she's a counter pick into certain cleaves. She does like really like some of the, there's like a bunch of Soul Weaver artifacts you can use for her, and it really depends on how you're building her. She kind of usually, she's pretty consistently floated around like the okay / good, like something she goes up and down anti-cleave area, but I think she's very nice to have a copy of. Celine, she's used specifically into Pirate Captain Flan, though there are ways to deal with it. She's not like a guaranteed counter or anything, but she's pretty nice to have around. Her usage used to be like, her and Politis are kind of like the anti-non-attack skill units, and their usage kind of like floats up and down. I feel like more recent times their usage has trended downwards a bit, but Celine, like, she did rise up a bit with the P-Flan buffs, and just sometimes there will be units that she counters that will, you know, get pushed into the meta. You know, so DDR isn't really used nearly as frequently anymore, and his matchup into DDR isn't even that guaranteed. His main use is really just, I think, sometimes in, like, Arena. If you're fighting into Perfumer Biblis, you might be able to use him for some quick battle teams or just auto battle teams. I think that's his main use. He honestly does have some use in like PvE down here. I just think he's more of a PvP unit, because sometimes there's the Death Dealer Ray Hall of Trials where you can end up using Schneel, but it's just not every Death Dealer Ray rotation even lets you use Schneel, so he's like a maybe. His mechanic of countering poisons and venoms, though, is pretty great. in terms of, like, within that niche. There's Aki, pretty sick. He's one of the more interesting units because of the way he consumes his own HP. Synergizes with, like, his barriers, of course, and stuff. He's a little bit hard to use, honestly, but he is a pretty solid, like, one-time DPS because you run out of HP and you can't really do anything anymore. He's... yeah. I would say he's, like, kind of hard to use and a little bit hard to build sometimes, and you don't really use him that often, so we just have him down here. Athena, she's a pretty solid healer, honestly. We don't, like... Ruel is a lot better. I think if you don't have Ruel, then Destina's value rises a lot for you, just so you can have, like, a healer. I don't think they're really that similar units. They kind of heal in different ways and do different things. But sometimes... I've had a couple of times where I just use Destina over Ruel in Arena, over if I'm, like, quick battling into, like, some Arbiter teams, because she does not take, you know, 5 million extra damage from Arbiter. So I think she still has, like, a bit of a niche and is decent to have a copy of. Paladus, her usage is, like, way down. You really only use her for, like, the crown cheese into certain non-attacks, but a lot of teams can deal with her pretty easily. She is also just another, like, you know, something to have in your back pocket sometimes for RTA, because her gear is pretty non-committal. You just slam, like, whatever tank gear you have on her, and then give her, like, an Abyssal Crown, maybe. Brigida got power crept pretty bad by a lot of better openers. There's, like, people really just use, like, Pyrocant Flan these days. She's her, and then you can, I think you just, like, you can have a copy of her because she does have her niche of doing her S2 into S3. Maybe in some Guild War situations you might find it useful. Litica, pretty decent openers. There's just a lot of better openers these days. I think the problem with openers is that you only have so much speed gear and you're only going to be able to invest so much. I think people who can actually gear Litica don't really need me to be telling them what to do. Saz is a potential DPS. Sometimes people use him with, like, Zeo teams. He's not, like, a super strong cleave DPS, though, I think. I think he's just in certain situations. His S3, with its, you know, the high damage and then the pop, has its uses. I think he can be nice to have. And then Crow, pretty niche Guild War tank. You'll only use him every once in a while, but sometimes he will be useful. His S3 does do quite a bit of damage. And then Fumir, she is pretty hard to work around because of the limitations on her passive. Frieren does make her slightly easier to use, but it's nothing, like, oppressive or anything. You might see Frieren Fumir on Guild War defense at some lower levels, but it's largely left the top levels at this point. I think it's a bit too easy to deal with. So now we have the PvE tiers, and I'll just quickly go over, like, their uses. Trial of the Constellations, he's insanely strong for that. And then Astromancer Elena, he's pretty consistently good at that, because there's one thing about Elena that never really changes, which is needing a unit with counterattack buff, and he has that. And pretty recently, she's had a few rotations where she wants you to have a bunch of buffs, and Charles gives himself 3. So has, like, a few uses in PvE, and I think he's nice to have. Ken, his S2 100% Death Break into dual attack is insanely strong. You use him in a lot of places. You can hit his ability to just increase your damage is insanely high for any sort of, like, content where you want to clear through it fast. So I think he's definitely one of the best PvE units to get a copy of. Fenris, one of the stronger PvE DPS. We of course have, like, Fene and stuff, but Fenris is still super strong. He's great for Aquinas, in Trial of the Constellation, Ice Expedition, Light Expedition. There's probably more places you can use him, to be honest. He's just a good DPS, especially into stuff that can activate his S2. Fallen Season, mainly for Earth Expedition. This is where I think, like, it kind of starts getting into more niche stuff, but I would pick Ball before everything down here, so I put him up here. Fallen Season, mainly just his debuff cycling is pretty much the best there's going to be. 100% Death Break and Speed Down on potentially a 2-turn cooldown if Etika Scepter procs over 2 turns. So really nice, and he does pretty solid damage as well. So now we have the lower priority PvE tier. Cecilia, she's kind of fallen off a bit because of Imprint Circuit. She's still, like, you know, useful against Death Dealer Ray Hall of Trials, but in Earth Expedition, her role as a secondary debuffer isn't really necessary because Ball and Sezin, now with Imprint Circuit, can ignore 15%, so if you have guaranteed debuffs, you don't need a second debuffer. And then you would drop her for a DPS, basically. So that's why I think her usage is down a little bit. She used to be up here, but she's still nice to have a copy of, I think. Lilibet, she's one of those 100% defense pen units, can be used to one-shot certain things. It's pretty simple. Charlotte is the DPS that I mentioned that would replace Cecilia in Earth Expedition, but there's a lot of different ways to kill Earth Expedition. Like, you can still use Cecilia. You can just do... It's Ball Mercedes, and then you can do either, you know, Kana Cecilia, you can do Charlotte Hazel. I think both of those teams will consistently kill Earth Expedition pretty well, but she does have her role as like the best frontline now for Earth Expedition, so I'll mention her here. And then Tenebria is a replacement for Ball. Even with Tenebria's buffs, they don't actually make her do anything substantial, I think. They're kind of just like... They do different things, but in terms of Earth Expedition, which is the only place these two are used, she's still worse than Ball because her debuff cycling is a bit worse than his. It's not really a huge gap though, and Imprint Circuit buffed her more than anything else, I think, because now you can just run triple DPS, or even quad DPS if you're using Kana, and you'll be able to clear it no problem, even though she's a bit worse than him. Do keep in mind that if you're using like Hazel or something, and you give her greater attack buff EE, she might steal the greater attack buff, which is not fantastic. So, very niche roster filler, maybe get imprints for good units instead. These are just units that like maybe have some kind of use, maybe, probably, hopefully, and you might want to pick them up just to fill out your roster. And I left off like all the other units, but you could also pick those up just to, you know, fill out your roster, because wishlist isn't really like guaranteed anyways. So this is just like, you know, like Melissa, Zahawk, Abigail, maybe you'll use them in Guild Wars sometimes, Genua, like, he's fallen off pretty hard, but maybe you can like hope him as like a DPS with Sea Phantom, or hope he gets buffed or something. Lua, a bit hard to use, you mainly see her on Guild War defense more than anything else. Elagos has really niche PvE usage, his Soulburn S3 is super strong. It used to be a bit better because, like, you know, ignore Ephras and stuff, now everybody can kind of do it, but it's still strong having a Death Break target pushback. All-in-one ability is very nice. Araminta, sometimes use her in Hall of Trials, her kit just kind of stands out as being nice, giving AoE attack buff, plus the double AoE, and then even like the burns on her S2 and healable on her S3 lets her fit into a bunch of potential mechanics they could use. Calric, Euphine, and Senya are just other options with like Cecilia and Fairy Tail Tenebria that can be used for debuffing the ads in Death Dealer Ray rotation. Wukong does a ton of damage on his S3. He's not like 100% Death Pen, but it's an insane nuke, and definitely like worth having just to have such a big S3 nuke. And sometimes his S1 can be used in Helena rotations. Bihu, maybe if you really want for like Trial of the Constellations, hooray, but I think it's very unnecessary. That's easily the easiest one, but he does have a use there if you are struggling with like Perdition or something. Lona, sometimes PvE DPS, her S3 can Death Break, and then her S1 has a ton of damage because of its max HP thing. Haste, Ancient Inheritance. Besides that, he's not really used that much. I think he just doesn't have a real role in PvE. Tywin, not super useful, but you can use him for Trial of the Constellation. Magnar, if you want to get it done easier, but Fenny does solo at level 5. In the case where it's like you can't get blessing levels for whatever reason, he would help you clear that. Ravi, Ancient Inheritance, can also be used to like solo some things sometimes, if you can get through Golem pretty well. Lilius, Ancient Inheritance. Luluka, also Ancient Inheritance. She does notably have very good defense break for a blue unit, but like, oops, we have Brieg. Where did he go? We have Brieg, so like there's not really any point, and she wastes a turn with her S2, please give it extra turn. And then there is Violet, also Ancient Inheritance, and I just put him next to Luluka. You can kind of use him in Trial of the Constellation Aquinas, but it's not like nothing super good. He's just if you start running out of units. So let's go over the artifacts too. Artifacts. The artifacts you have to keep in mind will vary very heavily depending on what units you own, because like let's say you have this like insane unit that uses like a B tier artifact or something, this means the B tier artifact could just be better than an A tier artifact if you have nobody to use the A tier artifact. And then the only artifact that's really free is Song of Stars. It's one artifact. I didn't bother making a tier for it. You can get Song of Stars for free for new players. So like I said, prioritize artifacts for heroes that you own or will acquire first. If it's a unit you plan on using a selector on, or like using like your newbie mystic discount pity on, then you could prioritize that artifact even if you don't own them yet. Otherwise, maybe pick a unit that you own. So S tier, Holy Sacrifice, this is the Vildred of artifacts. I think you just keep this thing on. One maxed at least is always a really high priority, I think, for anybody, but because, you know, the way wishlist works, I think you just keep one of them on until you have at least 2 maxed. 3 is like a luxury. I think 2 is a good point to be at. It's just super strong because of how many different knights can use it. Not having a Holy Sack versus having a Holy Sack can make certain knights a lot stronger. So next up, these are just units that are like pretty widely used or just insanely good on a specific unit. Bird's Eye View, after using an on-attack skill, you get souls. That's such a nice general effect for Soul Weavers. Like, this artifact has so much use. People are using it on scales. You use it on Beatom. People used to use it on like Young Senya sometimes in certain Guild Wars situations where it's you don't need a CR push from the artifact and you just need souls. I think the effect is just so nice in general. This artifact will pretty much always be good because it's hard to find a case where like you're not going to benefit from it, right? Yeah. Estelle artifact. This is of course really strong for Estelle, who is an S tier hero. It's also great for Arwell if you want to mitigate more of the damage sharing that she's taking. The Arwell does have other options, like you can go Adamant Shield to do even more team mitigation at the cost of Arwell's own survivability, and she of course does like Holy Sack sometimes, because Holy Sack will prevent her from getting bursted down, and it does like somewhat act as a way to help with the amount of damage that she's taking, but she won't, you know, have her escort on revival. Lethal Whisper's Evasion artifact, specifically for Setsuka. Nobody else really uses it, but given, you know, how nice Setsuka is and the fact that you can just select her for free, I think this is great to have on her. And then you have Thorn of a Blue Rose. I think this also has a pretty nice general effect. A little bit, like, you know, harder to use than Bird's Eye View, but it's 10 souls at the start of combat, which can be nice for just setting up some things in the first place. And then when you soulburn, you do a ton of damage. So any unit that has soulburn-based damage for warriors will really appreciate this. Dark Corvus is insane with this in Guild War. Another unit that uses this really well is Disciplinary Prefect Aria. Those are 2 ML5s though, so when I mention artifacts for heroes you own or will acquire, this is like the first casualty really, because this artifact only really gets used by those 2 units. Sometimes like Cheese, like you re-gear a Destro Bystander Hua Young, and Soulburner S3 can use this, but it's only really used by ML5s right now. Even though it has good general usage, you could prioritize it less for now if you don't own any of those units. Same with Sigurd's Scythe. Sigurd's Scythe Bruiser artifact gives you attack and then also healing when you're below half HP. Good on Lone Crescent Bellona, who is insanely strong, and then good on Bystander Hua Young, who is not insanely strong but still okay. 2 ML5s, great for them, and it's pretty much always been a good artifact since its release. I think it's one of the ones where it's like you kind of like hover around like 2 to 3 copies, but you yeah, it's the same thing where it's like it's used by ML5s, maybe you don't have them. Excommunicant Censor, I think was the name. This is one of the newer artifacts. Ivana artifact gives you a bunch of FRES and then you CR push at the end of turn. At the end of an enemy's turn, when the caster does not have the debuff, gives her CR push. So it's great for cutting. Great for like cutting into certain teams. Some Elena can use this really well. Beatom can use this. There's just a lot of units that like cutting into the enemy that can use this very well, and it does give a lot of FRES. I think this has largely power crept the Soul Constellation, which is a limited artifact. That artifact is definitely shot down a lot in value because of how good Excommunicant's Censor is, and also more accessible. Idol's Cheer, kind of an offensive Soul Weaver artifact. CR push your high stack ally after you are attacked. This is great for Soul Weavers who are hit frequently. or just like if you're going to be fighting an AoE, then you'll get the CR push your DPS and can create like lots of problems. So stuff like Ruel or Infinite Horizon Acades use this artifact insanely well. And then for Ruel too, like people like to use Candlestick a lot, but Idle Share gives you better tempo for your allies, and then even when you're in that situation where you're the last unit alive, you are the highest attack ally in that case, so you'll be getting a ton of CR push from getting hit, and this artifact will, you know, push you up over and over again, and you might get to cycle your turns a bit faster. Crown of Glory, you remove a bunch of souls on AoE attack, and it gives a bunch of damage reduction into AoE too. I think this is really nice for Boss right now, who is an S tier hero, and this artifact will kind of shift around sometimes, depending on who the best, like, mitigation knight is at that time, or like, one. It depends on, like, who is rotating as, like, one of the better protection mitigation knights, because it was used by Empyrean Elena before. But even in Guild War, I think she still uses it super well, because you can use her into, like, Genesis Ross and just kind of face tank the S3 no problem on your entire team. And then these two are both A tier artifacts. They're not any worse than the artifacts up here. They're just listed separately because they need plus 30. Renewed Will, insane artifact for Ranger openers. Briarwitch Assaria, Pirate Captain Flan both use this super well, but it does need plus 30 for consistency. It has a really annoying thing where the CR push checks on each unit separately, so if you miss a proc, it will probably brick your tuning. It would be a lot better if it like just didn't do anything, but it is what it is. You definitely want, I think, a copy of this plus 30, and this is one of the better ones, so just leave on your wish list until you max it out. It's hard to put this on multiple heroes because I think it's hard to gear multiple like Ranger openers like that, because you do need to be like tuned around it and everything. So only like if you're going for 2 MLB, you know what you're doing and you don't need my help. Sword Art Sword Storm, is that the name? Something like that. And this thing is Celine's artifact, so of course it's good on Celine. You don't necessarily need it plus 30. It does help a lot, especially for Celine, because the plus 30 effect is the guarantee attack buff, and then the CR push is guaranteed. It just scales up. At max, it's 24%, which can be significant having it max in some cases, because 24% notably outpushes a lot of other things. Like, it outpushes some units entirely. It outpushes pretty much every other artifact, because artifacts usually cap at 20. I don't know why this is 24. So if you're using it just for like CR push on something like Nurse Yulha, while the attack buff is nice, it's definitely still usable at lower, you know, or limit break levels, because you still get the CR push one way or another. You can use this on a lot of, like, not a lot, but any thief that wants to go fast can probably use this decently too, besides Celine, who is usually built not super fast. And then you have B tier. These are like, you know, for specific units. The CR push on this is nice for Sea Phantom Politis. CR push your backline after using it on attack skill. Vile Talisman gives you evasion attack at the start of your turns. It's mainly for Rihanna and Luciella, because with Vile Talisman you can't hit 100% evasion, but it's not really her best in slot, even though she is an S tier hero. She has other options. You can just give her symbol. You can do a lot of things with her, so it's only down here. Double Edge the Crescent, nice for Arbiter Vildred. Primarily, if you're going, you know, the post evasion build with him. He has DPS builds though, so it's not necessarily like his best in slot either. It just depends on how you're using him, but it's a pretty solid option though. Elbrus for Monica the Sword Assaria. She doubles its effects pretty much. There's really no other users of this though. Like, it's literally just this area. I would just stick with a single copy of this artifact. You can get 2 if you really want to like hedge for the future, but this artifact is mainly for Flag Sigret, especially if you don't like having an inconsistent artifact, because her personal artifact does need like plus 30 consistently CR push. This could be an option to just have her, you know, like rotate her skills a bunch of times really quickly. But if you are somehow in a really long match with her, then this artifact like does lose most of its effect after a while. Bastion, really nice tech. You give barrier and immunity buff to the holder plus the unit in the back row. Can be nice for like super protecting a certain unit. Even like Christy really likes this because she's already juicing that unit. And you can also use it for like buff stacking in certain maybe like Guild War, that sort of thing. Merciless Glutton really nice for Successor Teo, especially in RTA. I think in like Guild War and stuff, you probably don't need the CR push. You can use any damage boosting artifact, but the CR push is more important for like cleave setups in RTA. Umbral Keystones still has its role even with Fumir Arty coming out, because Fumir Arty needs plus 30, so a bit hard to like, you know, use. And this will still have its role as like a mage CR push follow-up artifact. Abyssal Crown, some AoE users can use this. Something like Arceti or Politis. It's not like super consistent. Weakening set does buff it a little bit. Its usage is not really that high these days, but if you want to like get it, you can. Windrider, a great DPS thief artifact. Right now everybody kind of wants photogenic, but there's no way to get it, so Windrider is going to be your option for a lot of characters, especially if you start running out of artifacts and stuff. B tier artifacts, we have Oddbade Orb, which is for Oddbade Ludwig. You kind of need plus 30 to consistently get souls from it, though. This is the reason why I've been stalling my Covenant summons. I want the plus 30 in my Oddbade Orb, or have like a better chance to. His backup artifact is down here, Unseen Observer. This is kind of like, this is a meme artifact. It's Tactical Architect Calling artifact. It's you need plus 30 to guarantee the chance to gain souls. It also gets Swift Attack buff, but it can let you do some really funny things with it in Guild War if you have it plus 30 with like Gala. Iberius Tooth, mainly for Amiki, does need plus 30, and maybe some units in the future will use it. Katie artifact kind of like somewhat encroaches on its space, but this, like, it's because of its wish list. Like, if you have everything else and you don't like have anything else you want to like put on, you could start looking at Uberius Tooth. So this is just stuff I just don't think you'll use very frequently. Durandal, good for Designer a little bit. Designer a little bit's just not good enough for me to justify pushing this up. And then this is for Aki. I think you just grab like a single copy of this and slap it on Aki. We have Alexa's Basket, can be used on certain thieves if you just want a chance to have the greater attack buff and like a big damage boost. Doctor's Bag, specific tech for Guild War for the most part. You can use this on like Aram sometimes to cleanse the debuff. It's used on units to give them a cleanse when they otherwise wouldn't have it. Unseen Observer, as mentioned, is a replacement artifact for Oddbade Orb for Ludwig. Gives you souls and CR push after using an non-attack skill. Broken Will of the Priest, Hit Chance and Death Pen for a knight. Funny on notice, sometimes if people try to evasion into you, you can just hit them with this and then they might not dodge. You see this sometimes on Guild War defense. Golden Rose, it's like the HP/defense bruiser version of Sigurd's. There's really just no users for this right now, so I don't think the artifact is like bad, I just think all of its users are bad. And then Shepherd of the Hollow? There's a lot of Shepherds, so there's Shepherd of the Hollow. This one, another evasion artifact, but similar issue to Golden Rose, its users are just not very good right now. And then you have Alabastron, which is just a thief artifact for F stacking. If you're running like RNL or something with high effectiveness, this can be really, really strong on her. So we have some PvE artifacts down here, and usually I would have called them PvE artifacts, but these are just low prio PvE artifacts because I don't think these are important these days. Something like Etika Scepter is for Earth Expedition. You only really need one copy of this artifact. It is literally only used on either Ball or Tenebria in Earth Expedition and nowhere else. And then with Imprint Circuit, you kind of don't really, you don't really need it. I think by the time, one thing is by the time you unlock Imprint Circuit, it takes quite a while to get there. So this can help you pump your Earth Expedition numbers a bit before you unlock your ignore 15% Imprint Circuit, but it's just not as important as before, especially given the Expedition is only here half the time. Bloodstone, similar thing, it's only used in Earth Expedition on, what's her face? Kana. And same thing, Imprint Circuit, pushed damage numbers in PvE so high you don't really need it anymore. But it takes a while to get to Imprint Circuit. It's just with Imprint Circuit you can skip Kana entirely, so hard to say this is really mandatory. And these are just some healing options. Rekos, just when you get hit, you'll heal everybody. Celestine, when you use a single target attack, you'll heal everybody, and then Broad, when using an attack skill, you'll heal everybody. Or you'll heal one person for these two, sorry. Anyways, just some healing options, or if you want them for PvE. So that is it for the wish list. There's like a lot of things you can put on. It really does depend on like what you want, and for artifacts, who you own, but hopefully this will help you decide what to put on.